Konnichiwa Internet, long time no face. Today I will be running you through my review of the Hori Silent Optical Stick. Okay, so this is what we're talking about right here. There's the 6-pin connector at the bottom. Right there, you can see on the top now. And it comes with a special harness to accommodate it. Right here. Okay, so the first thing you need to know if you're going to be installing this is it difficult to do? Okay, well, do you have a workshop? Do you have a soldering gun that you've used several times? Do you have an, I believe it's called an ohm meter, the little box that lets you test certain connections to see if they're running any current through them? If you answer any of those questions as duh, then yeah, you can totally do this. This won't be a problem. If you have a friend that would answer it that way, he's the guy you're going to want to go to help you out with this. If you don't have them, or your answer is, well, I can go buy them at like in a hardware store, right? Yeah, sure. No, don't do this. If you screw this up, you will destroy your PCB and you will essentially brick your stick until you buy a new PCB. If you purchase one of the new PCBs that are out now, the solderless kinds, you know, the do-it-yourself, easy breezy types, this might be a lot easier. I wouldn't know. I didn't do that. I don't know if it's any easier doing it with the Brooks adapters that they have and the Jason's Customs, etc., etc. I didn't do that. I put this on the stock PCB that comes with the stick. So right away, I'm going to let you know, I put this in my VLX, right? The premium VLX. I put it in this, and immediately these wires that come with the harness, the wires that come with the harness are not long enough. Again, if you use the PCB stack option that they have, I don't know if that would make it short enough, but I seriously doubt it. If you're installing this in a Mad Catz of any type, or the Hori Kai, any of those smaller sticks, it might not be an issue at all. But for the premium it is, and that's kind of annoying. It would be nice if there were another 5 inches on the wiring, maybe even 6. That way you could sort of clip it to where you want it to be and it would work with any of them. Because again, if you are installing it in one of those pre-mentioned smaller sticks and you have more wire than you need, you cut it and you're good. You know, it's not that big of a deal. With a larger stick, you don't have the wire real estate. I had to, you know, come up with a different solution. Fortunately, a friend of mine has all the aforementioned stuff and was able to help me set this all up. We basically took the original Hayabusa that was in this stick and we cut the wiring and then soldered the new wires on there and used that heat shrink wrap plastic stuff to ensure that they were completely protected. And I'm going to get it in here as close as I can, and I don't know if you're going to be able to see it, but if you look, where is it? Hold on. If you look right where the zip tie is, again, I don't know if you can even see that. I don't know if the light's hitting it right or anything, because there's a lot of stuff blocking the way, but if you see those little black things right there, that's what I'm talking about. We basically just put the heat wrap, we basically soldered the wires together and then put the heat wrap down. Oh, so here's another thing you should know. When you put it into the PCB, the original PCB, they're supposed to go in these, if you ever wired anything before, you strip the wiring out so you have the straight wire and you put it in this little pin that has kind of a C-clip, and you put the pin inside, or you put the wire inside the C area, and you slide it in towards the little pin part until it stops moving, and then you take a pair of pliers and you push the C down onto the wire to hold it and to connect to ensure the current connection, and then the pin part gets plugged into the motherboard. This setup doesn't come with those either, so even if you have one of the aforementioned smaller sticks, you're still going to need to get the right type of pin. I actually had some of those pins in my house, but they're for an old arcade board, so they were much too large. So I didn't even have the correct pinnage, so even if you do have a smaller stick, you're still going to need those little pins. My final verdict on the review of how easy this is to put together, I give it... I think that's fair. It's not difficult, but you need to know what you're doing. If you haven't ever done this before, I strongly recommend that you don't do this for your first time on something like this. I can't stress this enough. Even with your knowledge of wiring things, the wires were not long enough. So just that's probably the main thing I need to keep in mind here for you. And it also didn't come with the pins. So pay attention to both of those things if you decide to order one of these if you like them. Okay, so the next most important thing is if you're buying an optical silent stick, what does it sound like? right? I mean, that's obviously, that's got to be your number one thing. Number one thing is how does it sound? Because you're assuming if a company as well known as Hori or Sanwa, for this specific instance we're talking Hori, is to make an optical or a silent version of their stick, clearly it has to work or they wouldn't even bother putting it out because they would get blasted by the FGC and that shit would never sell. So the first question on your mind is, how much quieter is it? Well, here, let me show you. Here's my, you may not be able to see it, I guess you can see it. I'm going to put this as close to the microphone as possible. This is a regular Hayabusa stick. And I'm going to rotate it a couple of times so you guys can hear this. Okay, so that's your regular stick that everybody's pretty much used to. The silent. Right? When they say silent, they're not whistling Dixie. This thing is silent. It lives up to its name. I put this in this stick originally because I wanted to have a stick that I could play with if I decided I wanted to play in the middle of the night when my kid's sleeping in the other room and I won't wake him up. Because the slap of buttons definitely travels through walls, and the clickety-clack of a joystick can definitely travel through walls as well. So the first thing that I did was I got rid of the original buttons in here and put in the silent ones, which I'm pushing now if you can even hear it. Like, all you should be able to hear is the rattling of the case itself. And those were great, but then the clickety-clack of the stick would sometimes, get me in trouble. So now I've got the silent one in and I tested it, and that does not wake him up at all. It is super silent, it is awesome. It's definitely not going to disappoint you in terms of the sound. If you're expecting something silent, if you're expecting something quiet, you're going to get it. This stick is definitely going to hold up its end of the bargain as far as that's concerned. How does it play? When you first rotate this thing around, it feels straight fucking weird. Like, it feels like it's broken. Like somebody gave you a stick that got cleaned out, like got left on blocks in a bad neighborhood. It's like, what is going on with this thing? There's nothing in here. But as soon as you start playing with it, that weirdness just melts away, and the stick performs fantastically. In fact, I actually like it better than regular sticks. A lot of people say they love the click noise and they don't want to get rid of the click noise and the clack. I understand that, but to be honest, coming from old school arcade culture, you heard the slaps of the buttons because that's not click. When you hear the slaps of the buttons, that's the sound of the plastic part of the button that goes up and down hitting the plastic bottom part of the button. That's what you're hearing, and you definitely hear that in an arcade. What you don't hear is the cherry switches going clickety clickety click because there's so much other crap going around. People yelling, people screaming, other arcade machines blasting everywhere. So the sound of the click disappearing didn't really affect us. All we noticed was much higher accuracy, and there was never a question about diagonals. One of the big problems with old school arcade games in America specifically was you could a lot of times think you have that corner, but then you get swept and you're like, what the hell, I thought I was down blocking, and you'll just never really know. That problem's eliminated with Japanese sticks because of the square gate. You know you've got a diagonal. I mean, there's no question about that. The bottom line is, one thing they definitely did transition over with is that these sticks feel great and they give you great response and they give you exactly what you want. This is a brand new one. This is going into my regular stick that isn't silent because I like, not because it's silent, because I like the optical stick better than the regular stick. Keep in mind this is the Hayabusa, so I prefer the Hayabusa stick. So when I found out that the Hayabusa stick actually makes a silent version and I played with this, I was sold and I got another one. So I'm really looking forward to installing this on my standard stick that I usually use. So in terms of the sound, this thing gets a 10 out of 10. I mean, it does exactly what it says it's going to do. There's no real sound. The only sound you hear is the thumping of the inside of your box. The smaller the box of your arcade stick, the less thumping around you're going to hear because there's no room for reverberation of the sound. So I'm really looking forward to getting this thing in there. And in terms of the way it plays, I don't want to say it definitively controls better. It just feels like it does to me. It could just be me, but regardless, you're definitely not going to notice that it feels weird and you're dropping inputs and there's something wrong with the stick unless you install it incorrectly. It is a fantastic stick. I personally highly recommend it. It's not cheap. It's like, I think it's $59.99. It's worth it. It really is worth it. It's worth it so much. Like I said, I bought an extra one and I'm ready to go through this whole pain in the ass process one more time. In terms of the play control, as how it works, I give it a 10 out of 10 because it does exactly what it's supposed to do and it doesn't compromise on anything. It works flawlessly. So with this kind of rating system, I feel stupid saying 10 out of 10 because I feel like there's really, two scores. There's 0 out of 10 because it does anything less than perfect, and it means it's useless and you need to go back to a stick that fucking works. or it does everything that it's supposed to do, so it gets a 10 out of 10 because it does what it's supposed to do. So yeah, it does what it's supposed to do, so it's totally worth it. I love it. Okay, one last thing on here. If you're a tournament player, you may have already, seriously considered getting one of these. This is the Phreakmods Link, L-I-N-K, Phreakmods Link. They sell these on Arcade Shock. Oh, by the way, I will be putting links directly to Arcade Shock's website in the descriptions for all of these items so that you can check them out for yourself and see, exactly what I'm talking about. So the Phreakmod Link replaces the actual stick part of your stick. To put it on, it's super simple. So when it's off, your stick looks like this, right? Don't forget your dust washer. Yeah. So then basically when you're gonna put it back on, you just grab this part here and slide it back, and then you put it straight down on the stick that on the part of the other half of the stick that remains inside your box. Just you put this through first, and then you pull it back, and you just put it straight down on there, and you let it come down. Pull up on it gently to make sure that it's clicked in, and you're good to go. And then you've got your stick on here. The main thing I would say about them is they look, if you look at them, you can see they look weird. They're not straight. They're not straight. They have that sort of flare out, so you can grab them and pull them off. I was a little worried that might feel funky or interfere with the way that I held the stick. When you sit there and kind of hold it, you're kind of like, yeah, I don't know, I can feel it in my finger there. Again, much like the optical, when you're moving it and you're like, wow, that's weird. As soon as you start playing with it, it's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with it. I suppose it's possible that there may be certain gripping styles that will be annoyed by it. So I guess maybe try paying closer attention to how you hold your stick and seeing if maybe you need it. It does what it says it's going to do. It does it well. It's sturdy. It's very, very high quality. Like I said, the only real issue is that it's not a straight stick, so you might be off-put by it, or it might throw you off when you first see it, but once you start using it, it shouldn't bother you at all. But yeah, it's a nice little piece of tech. It's a nice little piece of hardware to think about. The main reason I'm talking about that here is because I tested it with the optical sticks, because I thought since you're essentially using light when you're moving the optical stick around, if you remove the stick itself and replace it with a 4-in-1, it might not work, or it might cause erratic behavior with the stick. I have been playing with the Phreakmods Link in my Hori Hayabusa Optical for probably about 3 hours of play total, and it has never dropped anything. It's never been weird. It's been completely fine. So if you're worried about that, don't be. It's 100% compatible with the opticals. So that's my review of the Hori Hayabusa Optical. I think it's a fantastic stick. If you like the Hayabusa in general, the Silent is a great option. If you are addicted to click, then probably not, obviously, but I guess that would sort of go without saying. So thanks a lot for sticking through this review, folks. I hope you enjoyed it. That's it for today, Internet. Johnny, bye-bye.
Yeah, Ryu, take it, you bitch. CBS3, motherfucker. Yeah, what's coming out?